Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of Rick and Morty Season 7, Episode 5, Unmort'd Rickon, a title that's a play on Unforgiven, the 1992 Western directed by and starring Clint Eastwood. It's a story that demythologizes the Western genre by frightening you with a supposedly white hat hero who goes completely savage to prove that the genre you're watching is not what you think it is. Similarly, this episode of Rick and Morty demystifies the series by closing out Rick's lifelong pursuit of Rick Prime in bloody fashion and revealing the origin of Evil Morty. It's packed with Easter eggs, animation details, and nods to the past episodes, so let's break down this canon episode, baby! We open on the Smith house, but there's no crack around the entire perimeter of the grounds, so we know we are in a different universe in C-137 because the Season 1 Rick C. Business episode, which was, by the way, the last time and the first time we saw Slow Mobius. That episode teleported the house during the party, leaving that crack around it for all canon episodes thereafter. The yellow sunset sky casts everything in the golden yellow tones that we have previously associated with the Evil Morty character. His portal is yellow, not green. Morty is so annoyed at having to go back up yet another ask for crystals, and this time Rick snapping at him to stop threatening to quit just hits differently with Morty.
Sorry to be such a high maintenance, Morty. Why don't I get you a drink?
Inside that fridge is a container reading "Do not open until X," and Morty gives Rick a 6-pack of Foamy's beer, suggesting that only an evil Morty would enable Rick's alcoholism. In his bedroom, this Morty solders a new device, later revealed to be his Evil Morty eye patch. Drunk Rick goes on the rant that he ended the first episode with.
Rick and Morty forever and forever 100 years. Rick and Morty some things. Rick and Morty 100 years forever.
Yeah, pal. Rick and Morty, 100 years, forever.
Whereas Rick previously scared this Morty by standing over him with his face in shadow, the garage lights behind his head, now Evil Morty assumes this pose over Rick, a way to symbolize their shifting of positions in this reality, their shifting statuses. Evil Morty enters with the scar-mouthed Evil Rick from Season 1's Close Rick Counters, the one revealed to be a remote-controlled puppet by Evil Morty in that episode. This Morty registration office has brochures. Ah, geez, the perfect fit! And it's in the month of Mortember. The clerk says,
"An eye patch. You know how we feel about pirates."
Yes, a callback to the Pirates of the Pancreas ride that Rick found to be scary in Season 1, and the joke in the Season 3 finale.
Stand down. He's not afraid of pirates.
Run, Morty! That part was true!
So, as we all expected, Evil Morty's eye patch was also designed to be a pirate fear tactic. This puppeted Evil Rick kills the other Rick guard, his back bending backwards, revealing himself to be the puppeted corpse of the Evil Morty's Rick, as Evil Morty removes his own records from the Morty archives, and the two go on a killing spree. In a Prince-themed reality, they stab the scientist formerly known as Rick, who is mentioned having been found dead in that Close Rick Counters episode. Everyone in this family wears Prince attire. The room has purple wallpaper with a paisley design on it. There's also a little red Corvette in a photo, and the dog Snuffles is dressed as Prince as well. They're eating spaghetti, and one wonders if that is actually the guts of this reality's 41 Kepler B planet. Then they go to a turtleneck reality where Snuffles also wears a turtleneck in the photo. This is one of the thousands of Mortys that Evil Morty kidnapped to torture to hide from the Citadel by poking them in the sides. Evil Morty scans each of their Ricks. Then we catch up with the events of Close Rick Counters when our Morty freed all those tortured Mortys to swarm that evil Rick, and we see one of the Council of Ricks, Rick Timinis, Sanchez takes pity on Evil Morty and escorts him away with his cloak. Evil Morty wanders into the Citadel slums known as Morty Town, and he reads a paper about the upcoming election. Graffiti on the wall shows M plus J for Morty plus Jessica, and then we catch up with the events of Season 3 Episode 8, the Rick Lantis mix-up with the President Morty and the election storyline and his takeover of the Citadel, and then we catch back up with the events of Season 5 Episode 10, Rickmurai Jack, with the return of Evil Morty and his escape from the Central Finite Curve and his little hop through his yellow portal, which is the last we had heard of him until Season 6's Solar Rick's episode that established that Evil Morty's plan included destroying Rick's portal gun travel. So now, Evil Morty is running through a reality mass that looks like broken pieces of other realities and surfaces that we've seen throughout the series all merged into this one bridge. The episode calls this the Infinite. We see multiversal travelers opening portals of all shapes and colors, each of them presumably Rick-style scientists who figured out their own portal gun travel and just ended up here. One portal drops out a family in the style of the Jetsons. This first family wearing white, red, and gold who get immediately shredded by their variants in blue and yellow, and then get shredded by their variants in orange and green. And I like how each of their outfits match the color of the portal that they drop through. But this last family gets eaten by a double-headed crystal monster, which Evil Morty flees until the monster is shredded by Evil Morty's razor net so that he can retrieve this pink crystal. So essentially, Evil Morty found a better way to retrieve these crystals that his Rick made him go up an ass to get in the opening scene. Evil Morty flies past other interdimensional beasts and these unlucky scientists of various species, and he identifies one sphere in the Central Finite Curve where he uses that pink crystal to add one extra layer of shielding to his mansion that allow him to kind of block out the view of the infinite and give himself a nice golden atmosphere like the reality he left. But then evil Morty realizes that the cause of this disruption to his paradise has been our Rick from this season, searching the central finite curve for Rick Prime, using this battle station to run these tubes into multiple realities and frack them down. Morty and Rick plug what are essentially large Duracell batteries into the machine with positive and negative ends, and listen closely to when Morty recharges one of them.
It's just good to see you outside the sub-basement.
Yeah, they included the sound effect an iOS device makes when you plug the charger in. Rick is flushing out all of Rick Prime's decoys. We know from the season 5 episode Mortiplicity that Ricks create almost infinite decoys of themselves that in turn create more decoys of themselves, so it's no surprise that Rick Prime does this too. And then evil Morty shows up.
Shouldn't you be turning yourself into a pickle?
Yeah, of course, a nod to the Pickle Rick episode, but also a dig at Rick's past refusal to go to therapy. But Rick says he didn't expect to interfere with evil Morty.
Shockwaves have more range than I thought.
Jesus, you heard a compliment? A monkey humping a shotgun has more range than he thought.
Yeah, I just like the continuity detail that normally the most hard-hitting jokes are given to Rick, but in the case of evil Morty, they really save the meanest ones for him. I like how our Morty is running off to find a net for evil Morty. The idea being that either something as simple as a net is really the only way to catch any Morty, or it's just something Rick might have told our Morty to get him to leave them alone, or maybe a false story because he wanted Morty to think that he could just catch evil Morty with a non-violent method. But evil Morty actually leaves Rick to filter for probability stasis, but the Rick Prime that gets caught is actually a trap that explodes into black goo, trapping them in a box with other Ricks who had tried to track down Rick Prime as well. These include a nerdy Rick, a 007 Rick, a Rick with a heart locket, a John McClane Rick wearing an undershirt and no shoes just like Bruce Willis in Die Hard, and then finally a scraggly looking Rick who's crouching in the corner. Kind of looks like Memory Rick from his earlier years whom we saw in the season 5 finale when he was first journeying out to avenge Diane and find Rick Prime. By the way, that younger Memory Rick was the one that was trapped in the subconscious in the post-credit montage of episode 2 of this season. I think this guy's a different Rick though. He has been there the longest and he says he's knocked off 3 clones. Then an Indiana Jones Rick drops in, firing a gun to which the bullet only stops when it hits evil Morty's shield, showing its energy absorbing power compared to any of the technology of the walls of this box that Rick Prime could make. Then a pre-recorded Rick Prime message plays and drops each of them down a chute with levers that automatically sort them 2 by 2 in different boxes, and Rick Prime reveals that all of the Dianes were erased from all existences using a device called the Omega device. The Omega device, by the way, is also the name of a super weapon from Futurama that popped up in the episode Into the Wild Green Yonder. In the duels, our Rick beats Die Hard Rick by deflecting his blasters with his shield automatically. Ultra Rick completely wrecks the nerdy Rick, and then Indiana Jones Rick shoots and kills 007 Rick. Rick tells evil Morty that he should help them because they both hate Rick Prime since he's the worst Rick, but evil Morty responds,
The worst turd is a pizza.
Whoa, tough customer.
How is the worst turd a pizza?
I did have to kind of pause on this one, but he is saying that since the worst Rick is technically the most unlike the other Ricks, then evil Morty might like him. Like, kind of the worst thing at being a turd would be something that you would love to eat. Coprophagia on Rick and Morty making another comeback. So scraggly Rick electrocutes Indiana Jones Rick, who withers into dust and dies, reminding us of the death of Walter Donovan in Last Crusade. But the door opens to scraggly Rick, and no surprise, Rick and evil Morty work great together throughout this episode. Like here, Rick bisects his top half, evil Morty kicks it. It's kind of creepy how well they work together. Rick Prime drops in a Diana death robot.
You sucked at eating pussy!
Clearly just said to be hurtful, but I also won't deny it. I was young.
Rick has to destroy this robot, and then the box goes up in flames.
What do you think? Sub-ether barrier blocking the portal fluid?
Can't be that. Mine would get through it.
Yeah, it kind of gets buried there, but evil Morty apparently designed a better portal gun than Rick's was. Rick merges the 2 guns and then powers it with some of the black goo that he had harvested, and the portal that gets projected swirls with Rick's green, evil Morty's gold, and Rick Prime's black, all swirled in together. Oh, one-shot energy, huh? I think I'll try it. Whoa! So what does One Shot's focus shoe do? Whoa, so One Shot really is all you need. Begin your transformation with One Shot Energy today by going to oneshotenergy.com/newrockstars for 10% off your order. Rick uses this goo to locate Rick Prime and heads out.
Gonna kill my nemesis!
I can't help but feel a little sad for Mr. Nimbus, who has been officially replaced as Rick's primary nemesis. Evil Morty suggests that once Rick kills his nemesis, he might kill himself next. This is something that has been hinted at throughout the series, but in the last episode we saw that Rick had actually built a suicide chamber and had been keeping it a secret this whole time. Evil Morty and Morty portal over to help Rick whether he wants it or not. So Rick charges to Rick Prime's fortress, which are surrounded by the same killbots that he unleashed on them back in season 6, episode 10, Ricktional Mortpoon's Rickness Morcation, and in Solar Ricks, Rick says,
"He built it again."
of course referring to Rick Prime's Death Star-like base, the Death Star that was rebuilt in Return of the Jedi. Now Rick Prime calls our Rick a wife guy, which, you know, it's kind of a social media thing where dudes make a constant post about how much they love their wives in order to get likes. It kind of sounds like Jerry is the ultimate wife guy of Rick and Morty. But Rick Prime says that they're the only two Ricks who actually invented portal travel, and he pulls out Rick's smashed car.
I can see why you hate him.
And she sounds like our wife, like in a f***ed up robot way, but that's definitely her voice.
So the Solar Ricks episode showed us Rick's Diane AI, which was voiced by Carrie Walgren, who also voices Rick's car on this series in his computer, hinting that Rick designed it this way intentionally, and now Rick Prime confirms it. Rick Prime has updated the Omega device so that it can be fired multiple times, and he plans to erase the entire Smith family person by person. So Rick Prime releases some decoys, and even Morty deploys some very Doc Ock looking tentacles that shoot some bombs. But Rick Prime starts by a member of Rick's family who's technically his uncle, Slow Mobius. We first met him in the season 1 episode Rick See Business.
Two Ricks? Where's my wife? I was just with my wife!
Uncle Slow? Slow Mobius?
Yeah, this one hurts me too.
And we see all the alternate timeline Slow Mobius is a baseball player, a rodeo cowboy, a king who has hunted a bear, a family man, a two-dimensional art rendition, and an evil squirrel. And Mobius is dropped into the Omega device and he slows down time before he dies. Afterward, Morty rightfully points out,
Kind of the worst possible time to use his powers. Just made the death happen slower.
and then we see how Slow Mobius was erased from his family, and they all react to his erasure. The art rendition erases into specific shapes. The bull reacts to having no one writing him anymore. Rick fires a bunch of bullets at Rick Prime, who stops them, like Neo in The Matrix, and then he loads them to another gun and fires back. Rick bends Rick Prime's blaster barrel back at him, but Rick Prime can regenerate his flesh. Evil Morty helps out, and again, they work great together. He does spin kicks to allow Rick to reset for another spin kick. Rick fires a rocket, like one that Tony Stark would fire out of his armor. Rick Prime catches it and throws it back at him. Rick Prime snaps his fingers, revealing 3 giant robot Dianes. Our Rick, dazed, hits a button on his leg right before he knows Robot Diane is gonna punch him. This keeps his leg activated to keep inching him forward. Evil Morty scans Rick Prime to see his upcoming attacks, seeing knife, and then wrist gun, and then Kuato Rick. Kuato is the mutant twin that grows out of George from Total Recall. Rick's unconscious body is slung around by his own cybernetic leg, which nunchucks him around until Rick Prime rips off that leg, and then Rick rips off his arm to plug into his leg stump. Rick Prime does the same with Rick's leg, and I just love how reverse compatible all of their cybernetic parts are. Their arms and legs get conjoined, and Rick uses his flame wrist, Rick Prime uses his chainsaw tongue, Kuato Rick pops out and stabs Rick in the belly. Rick Prime remains standing and greets who he thinks is his original grandson.
Original grandson.
Oh, geez. Nice to meet you, I guess.
I like how Evil Morty really plays up the uncertainty more than our Morty normally emotes, like he's a full sociopath. Our Morty wakes up.
Well, why am I wearing an eye patch? Did we switch shirts? Yeah. Thanks for the assist.
Yeah, I like the attention to detail in case anyone was also using the torn shirt sleeve to tell them apart. Evil Morty fries Rick Prime's backup, so if he dies, he would be dead for good. He offers,
All right, never been a sidekick guy, but I'm starting to see the value. You want a job? We could be like Batman and Robin.
I don't need a Robin.
again, the best burns are reserved for Evil Morty. Evil Morty's tablet lists Rick Prime's schematics as Booger AIDS V2, which is a callback to Solar Ricks and Morty's Mind Blowers, in which Rick hates to name things, and he names everything as Booger AIDS. Evil Morty reanimates our Rick, telling him,
Knock yourself out.
yeah, it's a great turn of phrase because, yeah, he's literally telling the old man exactly what to do here. So Rick savagely beats Rick Prime to death with his fists. It's very telling that he doesn't use any of the many killing implements that he's developed over the years, maybe because he's depleted all of them, but maybe because he just wants to make sure he's actually doing it the old-fashioned way. Like, he's been waiting for this, and he does it in the most feral way possible. Rick Prime screams at him.
You would have been me. I just walked into your garage before you walked into mine.
Yeah, it's one final taunt because Rick Prime is in effect saying, you're not killing me. The worst of me is going to live on in you now. Evil Morty asks Rick,
How's it feel? Better? No? Exactly the same? Yeah, it always does.
yeah, it's kind of been the theme revisited in countless revenge stories. Like when someone gets revenge that they've been seeking, does it heal them? In most cases, no. Now we don't see Rick Prime get buried or anything, and people might question if he's actually dead, but he is dead. It's done. In a Variety article, co-creator Dan Harmon and writer Scott Martyr talk about Rick Prime being dead and all the thematic doors it now opens up for the series. Dan Harmon said, I think there's still a conclusion to a story here because the narcissist will tell you that destroying yourself, it doesn't solve a problem. How Rick reacts to losing his sense of purpose gives the Rick and Morty team plenty to work with throughout the rest of the season. Scott Martyr said, "What do you do if you're Braveheart and you've been avenging your dead wife and you succeed and don't die and then live beyond it? Where's your story go when that's all that's defined you?" So after destroying the core of the Omega device, Evil Morty says,
I can end the Rick experiment anytime I want. Why threaten? Why not just do it? Because using a weapon like this doesn't get you left alone. You are a little different though, Rick. Maybe I can use that someday.
Yeah, Morty cycles back to Rick, to the alternate Rick at the beginning of this episode, telling this Evil Morty to stop threatening and just do it. But this time, Evil Morty pulls the punch. So over the final minutes, we hear Mazzy Stars look down from the bridge. Look down from the bridge. This is the same music that played at the end of season 1, episode 6 as Rick Potion number 9. And Rick is totally back to the same kind of mental place. He shuts down the lair that he was using to hunt Rick Prime. The lyric, "Everybody seems so far away from me," plays as Rick watches Beth and Space Beth and Jerry wash in the car, and then the family eats breakfast as Rick cracks some joke about Jerry that everyone laughs at, but we don't hear it. Instead, Rick just kind of laughs to himself, eats some eggs smiling, but is brought back to his senses by the taste, or rather tastelessness, of food. His smile fades, and his 1,000-yard stare returns, just like the one he had at the end of Rick Potion number 9. Where does Rick go from here? The post-credit scene sequence takes us to the wife of Slow Mobius. Their kids don't even remember their father, so she spirals into alcoholism. The hourglass is turned on its side because she doesn't care about time, but her head and her belly clock spin hour by hour, day by day. We see her tattooing on her knuckles, never slow. Yes, it's beat for beat a recreation of Rick's spiral from Rickmurai Jack after he lost Diane. Like, we see her building her own space cruiser, but this one is time themed. She scans being after being with a scanner that is in the shape of a clock. And then we see her eating ramen at the futuristic bar, like we saw Memory Rick doing. Both of these an homage to another Philip K. Dick adaptation, Blade Runner. But unlike Rick, she moves on. She meets a new partner and they fall in love and move in with each other. We see photos and from the plane kids. They ship on a clock-shaped rug in front of a clock-shaped window. We see how this guy is a widower with a kid of his own, and the families have now merged, yet they keep on their shelf a photo of Slow Mobius beside this new guy's late wife. Also, I love how you can see one of the photos they visited the Sequoia National Park. It looks like the giant Sherman tree. It's so sweet, but I also just love that we see the consequences of everything on this show. And this kind of gives us some hope, hopefully, for Rick's ability to just move on from this someday. Hey, please support us with our OB from Loki inspired shirt. We're all gonna die. You know, Rick would love to wear one of these. Grab one of these at nerdriot.shop. You can follow me on all social platforms at Erik Voss. Subscribe to all 3 channels in the new Rockstars network. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.